We now come to questions to Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Adam Jogee.
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's great to see the House so full for Northern Ireland questions. And may I congratulate all colleagues recently elected in Northern Ireland. I met the First and Deputy First Ministers twice in my first 4 days, where we discussed a wide range of issues. This included the Government's commitment to repeal and replace the Legacy Act, and I plan to update the House shortly on how we will begin that process.
Adam Jogee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I say it's very good to see my friends from Foyle and South Belfast and we're down on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that commitment the Secretary of State has just given us will be welcomed by many in Newcastle-under-Lyme and indeed Northern Ireland, given the lack of support for the Legacy Act. So can the Secretary of State undertake to consult widely on the Act's repeal and replacement, and will he keep the House informed?
I can indeed give my honourable friend that assurance, because the problem with the Legacy Act is it has almost no support in Northern Ireland amongst political parties, victims, families, and we've given a very clear commitment to consult on how the repeal and replacement will work, so that in the end we hope to get a large measure of support for a new approach, which the current approach has failed to secure.
Robin Swann.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for his answer. He will now recognise that Northern Ireland is represented by more than just the parties of the First and Deputy First Minister, indeed in the executive of the Northern Ireland Assembly, and now in this place. Can he give an assurance that he will deal openly and transparently with all those parties?
I will readily give the honourable member that assurance. I've met with all of the party leaders, and my commitment to consultation that I've just given to my honourable friend will extend to all the parties in Northern Ireland.
I now come to the Shadow Secretary of State, Alex Burghart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I warmly welcome the Right Honourable Gentleman to his place. I know he brings considerable qualities to his role, and I look forward to working with him on behalf of all the people in Northern Ireland. I'd like to briefly pay tribute to his predecessor, the Right Honourable Chris Heaton-Harris, who did such an excellent job and who is much missed on our benches. I very much welcome the positive meetings the Secretary of State has had with all parties since he was appointed. Following those meetings, can I ask him to reassure the House that on his watch he will be an active supporter of and advocate for the Union?
Well, can I join the honourable gentleman in expressing the House's collective thanks to my predecessor and to congratulate him and his honourable friend on their appointments. I look forward to working with both of them. The government is strongly committed to our United Kingdom. That was clearly set out in our manifesto, and I hope he will see that reflected in the work as we take it forward.
Alex Burghart.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman, the Right Honourable Gentleman, for his answer. The government's manifesto states that they're committed to implementing the Windsor framework in good faith. However, the manifesto did not mention the command paper, which was vital in getting Stormont back. As the Right Honourable Gentleman knows, the command paper contained a number of measures to strengthen the Union, the East-West Council and Intertrade UK, to name but two. Will the government faithfully implement all those commitments in the command paper that are designed to strengthen the Union?
Well, I can say to the honourable gentleman, as he knows, when we were in opposition, we supported the two statutory instruments, the humble address. We will set up the independent monitoring panel, and we have recently had a success in developing our relationship with the European Union over dental amalgam, where the new government has secured a 10-year derogation, which has been widely welcomed by the parties in Northern Ireland.
Yes. Right, we now come to Sammy Wilson.
Number 2, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 2, 10 and 11 together. The government is committed to ensuring that Euro 2028 benefits the whole of the United Kingdom. We are working as quickly as possible with all partners to assess the options on the Casement Park project.
Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many people were surprised when the Secretary of State first made it his priority to deliver on Casement Park, committing £320 million for a stadium to host 5 matches at a time when there are huge waiting lists to be dealt with in the health service. Special needs education needs funding and social housing needs funding is an indefensible use of public money. Can the Secretary of State give us an assurance that the government's view has not been influenced by any personal interventions by the Chief of Staff of the Labour Party, who has this is a personal project, and can he confirm that such intervention would be a breach of public standards in public life?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman, what I said, it was a priority because a decision needs to be made. The fact is the government has inherited a commitment to hosting the Euros at Casement Park. It is now a year and 3/4 since UEFA awarded that right to Northern Ireland and to the United Kingdom and Ireland. Nothing has happened during the year and 3/4 since then to progress the project. We're left with a situation where the cost has gone through the roof, and we don't know, even if you had the money, whether you could build it in time. And that is why the government is looking at it, and that's why I said it was a priority to make a decision.
Hanna.
The GAA is overwhelmingly a force for good across our island, and I was pleased to see so many in Britain enjoying the magic of the hurling final via the BBC on Sunday. GAA fans in Northern Ireland, like Northern Ireland football fans awaiting sub-regional stadium funding, have been let down by a decade of storm and dither, by sniping like we've just seen, and by the last government. Had they greenlit the project when they said they would, construction would have been well underway in time for the Euros. Can the Minister give an assurance that Casement will ultimately be built, and that spectacles like we're going to see this Sunday for Armagh will in time be hosted in Belfast?
Well, I think we all look forward to wishing well to Armagh in the All-Ireland final. The Executive's committed to the Casement Park project. It's been a commitment for, I think, over a decade now, but it hasn't progressed. Windsor Park got an upgrade, Ravenhill got an upgrade, and it's important that Casement Park is built, which is why I said on my recent visit that one way or another that project needs to be completed.
Jim Allister.
Will the Secretary of State explain to the 356,000 citizens of Northern Ireland who await outpatient admissions and appointments, to the 94,000 who await inpatient admissions, why, in the government's view, it seems to be a priority to pour hundreds of millions of pounds into a GAA sports stadium instead of fixing our health service? And if the government commits money, and if the Euros do not come to Belfast, won't the government be in the position where the rugby stadium, the football stadium, didn't get a penny of Treasury or NIO money, but GAA did? How could that be fair, and how could that be proportionate?
Well, I hope very much that sport will be a force for unity in Northern Ireland rather than a source of division. And when it comes to the health service, the honourable gentleman makes a very powerful point. The state of the NHS in Northern Ireland, with the longest waiting lists in the United Kingdom, is a function, if I may say so, of decisions that the Executive has failed to take over many years. And the people of Northern Ireland want to have a better health service, and that needs the plan which the new Health Minister is committed to.
Hopkins.
Does the Secretary of State agree that we wouldn't be in the final minutes of extra time as to whether Casement Park could be rebuilt in time for the Euros if the previous government had actually done something about it after we were awarded host status some year and 3/4 ago?
Well, I agree with my honourable friend. I mean, the facts speak for themselves. A year and 3/4 since we were awarded that wonderful opportunity to host the Euros, nothing has happened on the project.
Saoirse Eastwood.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will answer questions 3 and 9 together. The interim fiscal framework agreed earlier this year introduced a needs-based funding formula set at 124% of spending per head in England, based on the advice of the Northern Ireland Fiscal Council, and we are committed to taking forward these discussions with the Executive.
Saoirse Eastwood.
I welcome the Secretary of State to his place, and I look forward to working with him in his new role. Fixing Northern Ireland's financial framework is crucial to ensuring our public services are properly resourced and indeed impacting on my constituents in Lagan Valley. Will the Secretary of State ensure that any new arrangements are fully baselined and informed by independent expert analysis?
Well, the reason that the Northern Ireland Fiscal Council was set up was to answer the question, help to answer the question about what the need is in Northern Ireland. They came up with a range between 121 and 127% and opted for 124% in the middle. The fact that that was in the interim fiscal framework that the last government negotiated is welcome, was welcomed by the Finance Minister in Northern Ireland. We're committed to taking those discussions forward, and I understand that the Finance Minister in the Executive has already met the new Chief Secretary to the Treasury.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also welcome the Secretary of State to his place and wish him well in the role that he now plays. The Chancellor has indicated there will be a 5% increase in the wage for health workers and for those in the education sector. Unfortunately, under the Barnett consequential which we presently have for Northern Ireland, it means that 5% will not mean 5% to those involved in the education sector and the health sector in Northern Ireland. So can I ask the Secretary of State this question? Will he urgently look at this issue to ensure that the health workers and the education workers in Northern Ireland deserve the same increase in their wages as they do in the mainland? Because quite clearly, I'm here for them.
Well, as the honourable gentleman will be well aware, decisions about pay in Northern Ireland are a matter for the Executive. But any additional spending in England will apply through the Barnett consequentials to Northern Ireland in the normal way.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Secretary of State's commitment to needs-based funding for Northern Ireland. Does he agree that how the funding is allocated and how further revenue might be generated are matters for the devolved administration and for the Assembly?
Well, I certainly do agree, because look, all governments, and it includes the Northern Ireland Executive, has the money it's got coming in, the money it can raise in addition, and how it is going to prioritise its spending. And the Northern Ireland Executive does have more funding per head of population than in England, and it is for the Executive to take decisions about what their priorities are and to allocate the funding accordingly.
Shadow Minister Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And very kind. Can I welcome the Secretary of State and the Minister of State to their positions and thank them for their gracious phone call last week to welcome me and my right honourable friend to our positions too. On Monday, the Business Secretary slipped out a written statement rather than coming to this House, revealing that the government had decided not to proceed with an export development guarantee or emergency loans that would save Harland and Wolff despite its unique role and outstanding defence contracts. Will the Secretary of State now use their position to continue the support the last government gave to Northern Ireland and make it very clear to the Treasury that the people of Northern Ireland expect that the government should intervene in this case and support Harland and Wolff, which is desperately needed?
Well, I congratulate the honourable gentleman on his appointment. The reasons for the government's decision about Harland and Wolff were very clearly set out in the written ministerial statement that my right honourable friend, the Business Secretary, laid before the House. Harland and Wolff are now talking to their main supporters, Riverstone, about potential additional financial support. We are committed to shipbuilding across the United Kingdom, including in Northern Ireland, and as that written ministerial statement made clear, Harland and Wolff is an essential part of the contract, the £1.6 billion contract for the fleet solid support ships.
Gabby Robbins.
Number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I must say I'm delighted to be appointed to this role. I look forward to working closely with executive ministers to see public services transformed in Northern Ireland, and I'll be meeting with the First and Deputy First Ministers tomorrow in Stormont, as well as with the Northern Ireland Health Minister, Mike Nesbitt.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Minister of State and the Secretary of State to their positions. Delighted to see them in post, and I know that they are committed to seeing effective public services and stability of the institutions in Northern Ireland. But can I just caution that on the last number of responses we've received from the front bench, that we're having this recurring conversation that the fiscal framework that was announced back in December on an interim basis does not solve the problems that we have. And even the stabilisation money that was agreed back in December has already been forecast as necessary to sustain pay in Northern Ireland. Can I ask the Minister of State to engage earnestly not only in what government has been saying for the last 6 months of this Hugh and of the previous government, but to recognise that to provide good public services in Northern Ireland, we not only need to sustain but transform?
I agree with the honourable member. There's money allocated specifically for transformation of public services to improve service delivery outcomes. In Northern Ireland, 3 in 10 people are on an NHS waiting list. That number is 1 in 10 here in England. That is a figure that needs to be transformed to transform health outcomes. I will be talking about funding when I meet with executive ministers, but I would also be talking about other ways in which our doors are open, those of other ministers across the government too, in which we're determined to work together to transform public services.
Bob Blackman.
Number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will answer questions 5 and 12 together. As set out in the King's Speech, the Government is committed to repeal and replace the Legacy Act. As well as scrapping conditional immunity, we will set out steps to allow Trouble-era inquests and civil claims to resume. We will consult with all interested parties on a way forward in a way that can obtain support of victims and survivors and comply with our human rights obligations.
Bob Blackman.
Speaker, I congratulate the right honourable gentleman on his appointment and for his answer. Clearly, any delays, of course, will inbuild a legacy for the victims and their families who've waited a long time for closure on these particular issues. I understand absolutely the need to create a consensus across Northern Ireland for what is going to be proposed. But could he set out for the House the timeline and the plan for actually achieving that, and also agree to come back to the House and update the House when that plan is ready?
Well, I'm very happy to give the honourable member that assurance about keeping the House informed and reporting to it on my plans. I can say to him, as far as the Independent Commission is concerned, the Government has decided that we will retain it because the Stormont House Agreement that we say we want to return to the principles that it set out envisages both information recovery and continued investigation. Those two functions are in effect combined in the Independent Commission. I met Sir Declan Morgan yesterday to talk about how that work can be taken forward. The Commission is now open for business and it is available to families to approach to find an answer that many of them have been looking for so long.
Richard Holden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The former member for Plymouth Moorview was a very strong advocate for veterans in Cabinet, in Government. Can the right honourable gentleman assure veterans in Basildon and Billericay and across the country that any future legislation will protect now elderly veterans from vexatious legal action in the future?
Well, I pay tribute, Mr. Speaker, to the work that veterans, members of the police and the security services did over many years during the Troubles in trying to keep people safe from terrorism. And I undertake, as part of the consultation I've already set out to the House, to consult veterans' organisations.
Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I welcome the Secretary of State to his position. Can the Secretary of State further outline what discussions he is having with groups and organisations who represent innocent victims, and can he assure this House that in repealing this legislation there will be no pandering to those who were the victim makers? Also, what meaningful engagement he is having with the Irish Government, who opposed the Legacy Bill but have disgracefully refused to deal with the many allegations of state collusion with the Provisional IRA, thinking specifically about the long-awaited public inquiry into the Omagh bombing.
Can I say to the honourable member, I discussed the matter with Michael Martin when I saw him very early on after my appointment, and he has expressed the hope that a way forward can be found that might lead to the withdrawal of the interstate case that they have brought. I will certainly engage with victims' organisations, a number of which I met during my time as the Shadow Secretary of State, because I am committed to trying to find a way forward that in the end, if this is going to work, it's got to work for the victims' families, because they're the people who say what went before hasn't given us what we were looking for.
Sir Desmond Swain.
Sir. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. We are committed to implementing the Windsor framework in good faith in partnership with the EU and taking all steps necessary to protect the UK internal market. We are also looking to negotiate an SPS veterinary agreement with the EU, which could help.
Commit to all the provisions of the Safeguarding the Union agreement.
I already set out my answer to that in response to his honourable friend who speaks from the front bench. We are taking those commitments forward. But I would also point out to the honourable gentleman that it is by working in partnership with the European Union we can make progress, and what was achieved recently on dental amalgam is a really, really good example of precisely that.
Dr Neil Hudson.
Number 7, Mr Speaker.
I understand how important and urgent this issue is, and I'd like to thank the honourable member for his contribution to the Veterinary Medicines Working Group, the work of which we have committed to continue. There's a grace period arrangement for veterinary medicines that remains in place until the end of 2025 and provides for the continuity of supply to Northern Ireland. The Government will continue to progress the work on this issue as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer. The Windsor framework secured by the previous government extended that grace period to veterinary medicines in Northern Ireland till the end of December 2025. This includes vaccines and anaesthetics, so it's vital for biosecurity and both animal and public health that access continues. Can the Minister assure the House that the Government will strain every sinew to secure permanent access to veterinary medicines in Northern Ireland? And will they continue with the Cabinet Office Veterinary Medicines Working Group on which I sat that was working so hard to find a solution?
I thank the honourable member, and I can confirm again that Veterinary Medicines Working Group will continue. We recognise its importance, and we will continue to work at pace on the long-term solution, because that continuity of supply and knowing that well in advance of December next year is very important.
Lib Dem spokesperson Wendy Chamberlain.
Mr Speaker, may I welcome the Secretary of State and his team to their place. May I also associate myself with the remarks of the Honourable Member for Belfast South and Mid Down. I can only hope the success of the hurling being shown at the weekend means that the BBC will consider the Shinty Hurling International that takes place every year. I welcome attempts by the new government to continue to rebuild trust with Northern Ireland political parties and also to improve relations with the European Union. It offers that opportunity to reduce frictions in trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So, Mr Speaker, can the Secretary of State set out what he is doing with ministerial colleagues and other departments to open the doors to securing a veterinary agreement with the EU, which will further reduce those barriers to trade?
The Government is committed to working at pace on a long-term solution, including a veterinary agreement. This may change the relationship with the EU and build more trust, and so a bespoke agreement may be needed, but we are working at pace to secure this.
Dr Alison Gold.
Question number 8. Mr Speaker.
Thank you very much indeed. With permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer questions 8 and 14 together. A fortnight ago, the Minister and I met the Taoiseach Michael Martin in Hillsborough, where we discussed strengthening relations between our two governments, given the importance of our relationship with Ireland. The Prime Minister and the Taoiseach also held a bilateral meeting ahead of the European political community last week.
Dr Alison Gold.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and may I also thank Secretary of State for his answer. Duchess China, which I believe, Mr Speaker, are the suppliers of your very excellent commemorative China service, is based in my constituency, Stoke-on-Trent South. The Republic of Ireland is an important export market for the company, and Northern Ireland is an important part of its domestic market. Can the Minister tell us how relations across the Irish Sea and Northern Ireland island borders be enhanced for the benefit of companies like Duchess China?
Well, I congratulate my honourable friend on the company that she mentions and the products that it produces. We are committed to protecting the integrity of the UK internal market, so that great firms in Great Britain and in Northern Ireland are able to sell right across the United Kingdom and internationally. And for Northern Ireland in particular, it has extraordinary opportunities and so much potential, which we now need to build on. One of the most important contributions the executive can make is to ensure executive stability, because that's what investors are looking for.
Emily Darlington.
Can I congratulate the very honourable member on his position and hope that he will be able to rebuild those relations that have been strained through the Brexit process. I'd like to ask my question, very much like my colleague, about small and medium-sized businesses in Milton Keynes Central that have had to go under because of the additional paperwork and other restrictions through our strained relations now with the EU. Can he confirm with me that he is talking to the Irish government and others about how we reduce those barriers to trade?
Well, there is no doubt that the change in our trading relationship with the European Union has brought additional costs and paperwork for businesses, whether they are selling to the EU or into Northern Ireland. The Windsor Framework is the means by which we are trying to manage that. And I supported the Windsor Framework, negotiated by the previous government, because it represented an important and a significant step forward. But the reason why we have to continue to implement it is because if we're going to get the veterinary and SPS agreement and other agreements we are seeking with the European Union,
go on. We've still got others.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Anglo-Irish agreement is absolutely vital, and the meeting between the Prime Minister and the Taoiseach was to be welcomed. Prime Ministerial diaries become very full. Will he use his good offices to make sure that that dialogue between Taoiseach and Prime Minister continue, to build on that relationship, to see it flourish still further?
I can indeed give that assurance, and my right honourable friend has agreed there will be an annual summit.
Final question, Gregory Campbell.
In discussions with the Irish Government, does he agree with me that ensuring that they understand that the vast majority of people in Northern Ireland, whether they consider themselves to be British, Irish or Northern Irish, can see that there's a United Kingdom context that allows them that diversity, and that improving the lives of existing generations is the best way to preserve the lives of everyone for the future?
I join with the honourable gentleman in that commitment to improving the lives of the people of Northern Ireland. That is something that we as a government are committed to work on with him and all of his colleagues in Northern Ireland.